Hi, it's been a minute. Um, Today I want. Oh my god, I'm already like. I've not been feeling the best lately, but I feel like that's something that's really important to document because I don't just want to talk and document whenever I'm doing good. Like it's about the whole journey of everything. And the whole point is like, even like to remember how low you were and then how you got out of it and all of that, whatever. The way that I'm speaking right now is so vague. It's so hard to explain how I'm feeling lately. I know one thing that's been bothering me a lot is how much I've been faking everything. And so for the last like week, I've been trying to hype myself up, trying to get myself to record an episode where I'm just real about what's on my mind. And mental health is something that's so important to me. And so why have I not been talking as much about it? And it really is hard to talk about when you're in it, when you're in the middle of a rut. But I feel like that's like one of the most important times to talk about it. And I know that this is something that would have helped me whenever I was going through it if I, like heard this experience from someone else. So I feel like this could help somebody else. And I know that it can. Like I've like had other videos where I'm not even saying something to intentionally help other people, but people will message me and be like, like just from you being yourself in your videos, I feel like more free to be myself. Or, they say that it's like admirable or encourages them in some way. And so if that can help, then, I don't mind sharing. And I also want to break down the whole like taboo about mental health because although it's gotten a lot better within the last like 10 or so years, there's still so much that people don't talk about. They don't talk about the details because it's like we want to forget it. We don't want to sit in it and dwell in it. But at the same time, like by trying to not talk about it and let it break us down, we avoid it and we don't really address it and get to the root problem of it. And it becomes even more taboo. It's like we're not supposed to talk about sensitive subjects because, you don't know how someone else might take it. But then sometimes people, all they want is someone to talk to you about it, and that alone can really help. So, yeah, like if you don't, well, you probably don't know this already because I have like 25 people here. But I talk about this on TikTok. I have a few mental health conditions. I have a depressive disorder. I have an anxiety disorder. I have ADHD. I may or may not have some other things that just aren't diagnosed. I do have OCD tendencies, and the reason why I say tendencies is because right now it's not to the point where the symptoms would qualify as having the disorder, because there are times when it's more mild and more more severe. And right now my OCD symptoms are not at the point where it's debilitating for me. So right now it's really just at a point of like tendencies. There's so much with my history that like would be a lot to get into. I don't know if I'll get into all of that, but it's like there's been flare-ups that have been really bad to where if you were to read the description of what it takes to be diagnosed with OCD, I fit that entirely. So at that point in my life, I had OCD. But since I don't fit that anymore because my symptoms have lightened up at this point in my life, I wouldn't say that I have it. But, if that makes sense there. And so I took bupropion for, what was it, like 8 months for my depressive disorder. It's kind of confusing. I don't know if on paper it says I have depression or what, but I got prescribed that for SAD, for seasonal affective disorder, because I've always had it way worse in around September, October. That's when it gets to me the worst. And it lasts that way up until where I live. The weather doesn't really feel like spring until like about March. So that's how long it takes. Like that's like 6 months of my life where I feel like that. And so that's what I was taking it for. And I was off of it and I feel like I was doing okay. And now I just like, well, oh my gosh, I'm all over the place. I go, whenever, aside from the seasonal depression, whenever it's not that time of year, I do still get into ruts. And those, like, I can feel when they're starting to build up. And when I'm in them, it's like, I don't want to take care of myself. I don't want to eat. I don't want to shower. Like, one of the symptoms is not having interest in the things that used to bring you joy. It's like when you're in that, nothing can bring you out of it. And it's so hard just to do anything. And so I'm not at that point right now, but I'm at this point of like really starting to not care. I notice it's like, and part of it is almost liberating because it's like other days I get too anxious to even go out if I don't have my makeup done because I'm worried about being judged. For what reason? No one really cares. Everyone's so involved in their own lives that they don't really care that much about you, you know? And so sometimes it's liberating to not have to care about what other people think of me, but it's not for the right reasons. It's not because I don't care what people think of me. It's because I am so tired and drained and I don't have the energy to where I just don't have the energy to care about anything about what people think of me. And that goes into my behavior to where like whenever I'm at work and I'm running through the store, sometimes I don't really think about the people around me. I forget to say excuse me when I'm walking by people. I'll rush past. I forget my manners. Like, I just don't care. And it's so bad. Like, I don't want it to be to that point where I am hurting other people just because I'm not doing great. And it's not like I'm necessarily hurting. It's just that I'm not being very considerate. And that's not me. Like, I have it written in my journal. Like, I'm very prone to having like identity crises, because for a long time I didn't form my identity in a very healthy way. Because I grew up in a very like traumatic household where I really had to cater to the people around me in order to be safe and to not be a target, because I was always a target. I was always the black sheep. It was, yeah, like that was not fun. And so, with having to alter who I was depending on who I was around for the sake of my safety, I didn't have a lot of time and space to figure out who I was. I didn't have those resources. And so I feel like I've done a lot of that just in the past few years. But sometimes I still fall into this state of like, who am I? Especially because I spent so much time masking growing up, having ADHD. Like, I used to just adapt my personality to who I was around, to who was most accepted. And like I said, I never formed my own like identity. Well, not for a very long time. And so in my journal, I have it written down, like a bunch of traits that I associate with myself, even things that like sometimes can be considered a bad thing, things that I tried to run away from or hide because of how other people made me feel about having them, and one of those traits is being compassionate, because ever since I can remember, my compassion came with a lot of sensitivity, and sensitivity was not received well by the people around me because I would cry at moments that were not very appropriate because I was just so sensitive to it. Like, I could be in the car and then I could hear them say like, oh yeah, they're doing construction over here. They cut down a bunch of trees. And I could be thinking about all of the animals that lived in those trees, and I would start crying, and to my family, it wasn't just like a personality trait, and it wasn't just like a quirk or anything to where they would like, like let me cry it out and then calm me down. No, it's like I was shamed for it. Like, why are you so sensitive? That's why my childhood nickname was Crybaby. And so for the longest time, I was so ashamed of being so sensitive. And I hate that crying itself has such a taboo, because crying isn't always sad. I would also cry whenever I was happy. And that also was not received well. That would make people uncomfortable because the people around me never really learned how to connect with their emotions, how do I explain this? It's like they would always run away from it because being emotional was being vulnerable, and that was too much. Mental health, especially growing up in Asian immigrant households, was like, depression doesn't exist. You just man up and you get over it. There's no such thing as anxiety. Get over it. It could be worse. Other people have it worse. There are children starving, which, yes, it could be worse. But in the way that it could be worse was said to me, it was like, your problems are not valid, Because you can admit, like, yeah, the problems are valid, and yes, it can be worse in other places. And in that way, I'm grateful that things are not worse for me. But that doesn't mean that things do not feel bad for me right now. Notifications, I should have turned that off. And so, anyways, this really is like, if you can't tell by now, this is just diary. This is just diary format. Me just dumping everything in my brain about what I've been feeling. Like, the way that, dude, I have not brushed my teeth today. I got up, I made tacos, we ate our tacos, and then I went and took a nap. I FaceTimed my sister for a little bit. I put away a little bit of laundry, and I was listening to some music. And I was listening to the song Who You Are by Jessie J. And what is that lyric? What is that lyric that I'm trying to think about right now? I can't remember. But that song, if you've never listened to it before, it's a very emotional song. And lately, I have been thinking about who I am and how the life that I'm living right now is not the life that I want. I feel like I've made so much progress in the last 2 years. Like I used to be, everything that I used to write about previously to these 2 years in my journals about with the life that I wanted and who I wanted to be, I finally became all of that. And I was so proud of myself. Like, I was like, I used to hate myself so much. Like, I used to look in the mirror at myself and I would just pick out everything that I hated and I would cry and I would think that I was worthless and that like there were people that were so much better than me and that the world would be so much better off without me. I used to like hate everything from my appearance and my personality, like how emotional I was, how awkward I was, how like I never really fit in anywhere and I felt like I just didn't belong here. And sometimes I still feel like that. I don't know if it's something that will ever go away, but it is something that has eased up a lot with time and healing and accepting myself. And I know that if I can do it, other people can too. It's just that a lot of people don't know how. And I don't know, maybe I can help in some way. I would like to. I so I mentioned like my traumatic upbringing. I didn't move out of that until I was 19. And then from there, there's so much changed. Well, anyways, it took a lot. It took a lot to get out of that. I was never properly set up. So there was a point in my life, like my parents never really prepared me for what real life was like. So there was a point where I was saving up for a car. I didn't get my own car until I was 19. I don't think I got my license until I was 18. Hold on. I think I got the car and the license when I was 18. But before that, I was saving up a lot of money. I was working a server job at Applebee's and also working at Dollar Tree, and I was in school full time. And since I didn't have my own car, I had to rely on other people for rides, and I would pay them gas money in exchange, so that made it take a lot longer to save up money. And I remember having envelopes labeled with the week and labeled with a certain amount of money to put away to save up for the car. And then a bunch of stuff happened in my life. I call it was like a trifecta of really bad things that were unexpected. Like one of my family members ended up in the psych ward a month after one of my family members passed away very unexpectedly. And she was somebody that was like, how do I explain this? Like she was the core of everything. Like she was, and I have a lot of family, so it's like it hit everybody really hard. And then I also experienced my very first breakup. That was all within a span of 3 months. Those three things happened to me. And that just, I had never been so low in my life. And I remember always worrying about that family member that went to the psych ward. Like, even when they weren't in there, when they were out, you always had to keep an eye on them, worried that they would hurt themselves, whatever. And so that, along with, my own mental health not being addressed and trying to manage school and work, like, at this point, I think I had actually gotten laid off from my job because it was in the middle of COVID. And I had quit the other job with the intention of keeping one of them, but, stuff happened. And then I ended up moving out into some other family member's house, and it was just sharing a room with, like, 3 other girls. Oh my gosh, like, it was a lot. Anyways, when I finally moved out of that, I saved up the money. I was lucky enough that one of my family members helped me get a car with and I did pitch in some of my money that I did have saved, and I ended up moving out. But whenever I had all this planned to move out, nobody believed in me. Like, they were like, oh, Caitlin, she's so naive. She's so dumb. Like, I don't know why she would want to move out right now. Like, why wouldn't she want to save up money? Right? They're like, she can't, because that's how they saw me. They always saw me as naive and dumb, and sometimes I was naive. Yeah, like, I was 18. Everybody's a little naive at 18. But I wasn't just naive. I was desperate. I was desperate to get out. I had no choice in my head. In my head, it was stay here and go crazy or take the leap and get out. And so I finally did that. It took a little bit too, because when I moved out originally, I moved out with the roommate, and that was not the very, you know, you end up seeing a lot of people's true colors when you move out and stuff happens. And then so I ended up signing out of that lease after a lot of trying. It was not as easy as it sounds. And then I moved into my apartment alone, and I was paying for every single one of my bills alone, making $10 an hour. Making $10 an hour. Like, that's so crazy. I don't know how I did that. And so, you know, one thing that helps me like come to terms with everything and be okay with the fact that everything happened is that I know that I can help other people. There's somebody I know right now who just recently left an abusive situation, and they told me, you know, one thing that gives me hope and makes me not feel so alone is knowing that you did this, that I'm in the same situation that you were in when you transitioned into, you know, leaving, you know, taking the initiative and like really taking the leap and moving out of the abusive household, and also just all of the emotional healing that comes with, like, you know, one thing that, like, there's still things that hit me now, and I think this is why my therapist said that I probably have CPTSD, complex PTSD, which I think basically means that there are multiple incidences that caused it, not just one. Like, it's a course of, like, over time that all of the trauma had built up. Like, things that I still work through. Like, the other day, no, it was like a couple months ago. I don't know why I said the other day. It was a couple months ago. My boyfriend had poured cereal for both of us, and I was talking, and I move my arms around a lot when I talk, when I'm not holding a mic, you know. And I accidentally knocked his cereal out of his hands and onto the floor. And I remember I just stood there like shocked. Like I was scared. And then he just laughed a little bit, and he started cleaning it up, you know, teased me just a little bit for being a little clumsy, but not like he was shaming me or yelling at me, because that's what I was used to, was that anytime I made a mistake, and yeah, clumsy, it was Crybaby and Clumsy, my two childhood nicknames. Like, I don't know if I can even consider it childhood nicknames. I think those stuck with me for, when I'm around some of my family members, that nickname still comes out, you know? But for him to not yell at me about it, like, that shocked me, you know, because I was waiting to be yelled at. And obviously, like, he's never done it. Gosh, that man is one of the best things that's ever happened to me. I can't believe I'm saying that. Anyways, there are some good men out there, okay? And so to not get yelled at was so crazy to me, because my body is still so used to it. Like, I was scared that I was going to get screamed at. That's like, and I remember all these other incidences, like a couple years ago when I was working at a restaurant, our manager had just gotten on us about running trays, which I had never had a problem with. I didn't mind running trays, you know, bringing food out to the tables, even if they weren't my table. I never had a problem with that. If I saw a tray, I would run it out. But I remember one time a tray had just come out, and I was like, and then I just remembered something to do with my other table. So I told the person standing there, I said, I'm just going to go tell my table something real quick, and I'll come back and run this tray. And then so I went out to my table. At the same time that my manager saw me running out, she thought I was running from the tray, and she shouted my name. She was like, Caitlin. And it was the way that she said it that immediately right then and there had me burst into tears, because that was the same tone and the same way that she said it was how I used to get yelled at as a kid. And so I remember, you know, I had to talk with her after that. Like, she called me out back, and we spoke about it, and I broke down into tears talking to her about it. I was like, I was going to run that tray. I told the chef standing there that I would be right back to run the tray. I just needed to go and tell my table something before I forgot, or I think I had to bring something out to my table. And then, you know, she was like, okay, like, and she understood, and, you know, I think she felt bad because it also was uncalled for her to shout at me in that tone loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. And so she apologized for it, and we were cool in the end, and she ended up becoming one of my favorite managers. But like I said, it's stuff like that where it's once you're out of the situation, stuff still follows you. There's still a lot of healing to be done, a lot to unwrap, a lot to just, I don't know, there's just so many layers to everything, so much to address. And so sometimes healing sucks because it's like, when does this ever end, right? But then I remind myself how far I've come and how I don't look at myself in the mirror and hate everything about myself anymore. Even though some of this stuff still follows me around, I don't feel like I'm worthless. Sometimes it still hits me because healing is not linear. I saw this thing the other day that was like, they should make a healing that is linear. But it's like, it's always up and down. It's like, now I know, like, there are bad days, but there are better days too. I don't know, the sun will still come out tomorrow. I always feel better in the morning. I remind myself that at night, that's when things feel the worst. That's when the world feels the darkest. But yeah, the sun will come out tomorrow. Like, it'll be okay. Like, just go to sleep. Don't make any rash decisions. You'll always feel better in the morning, even if it's just a little bit. And that's enough to keep going off of. Like, what do they say? All you need is a little bit of light to light the way, I don't know, and I remind myself, as long as I have just the tiniest bit of energy, the tiniest bit of motivation, I follow that. And the more I nurture that tiniest bit, the more it'll grow and the easier it will be to get through it. And sometimes I'm tired of fighting. I just want it to be over. And then something happens that I don't expect. Like when I met my boyfriend, I really didn't expect it. I was in my hot girl era. I'm kidding. I hate hot girl era. What the fuck does that even mean? I'm not a hot girl like that. I don't know. I've always been such an introvert. For me, my hot girl era was hopping on Tinder and just meeting people and just talking with them. I didn't even call it dates, I said I was like, because I never liked setting up the expectation that something romantic would be there, because you can't tell until you get to know the person. But it's weird when you get to know the person and you set that expectation for romance immediately and then it doesn't happen, or one person sees it romantically and then you see it platonically because you're not feeling them like that, and it's just awkward. And so I was at this point in my life where I had broken up with my ex, and I was like, whoever I meet next, they're gonna have to meet all of these expectations. I'm not putting aside any of these things. Like, all of these red flags, they're staying red. I'm recognizing that they're red, and if they are red, they're not gonna have a chance because I want what's best for me. I was at this point where I wasn't gonna settle for less than I wanted. I was like, I don't care if other people say that it's unrealistic. I think it's realistic for me. And how did I word this? I had a better way to word this. My brain's just not like, it sucks because, yeah, my brain's not functioning the same, and I feel like I'm rambling and not getting my points across more so than usual. But anyway, I basically didn't expect to like my boyfriend as much as I did. He came in at a really weird point in my life, but he exceeded all of my expectations. I describe it as like, he showed me love in ways I never knew existed. The little things. When I'm getting the plates ready first of all, I started cooking for this man. I did not cook for men. Like, not just because they're men, but I mean, like, the men that I was with, I never had the urge to cook. I never really wanted to, because it just never really happened. But with him, I want to cook. I want to pack him lunch. When I was setting up the plates today, and this is an everyday thing whenever I'm making dinner, he'll ask me what I want to drink, and he sets up the table. He'll put on whatever show we're watching that day, and when we sit down to eat, we take our first bite together. He opens my drink for me. It's one little thing. One less thing for me to worry about, I remember when we first started dating, and it just kind of happened as a little joke that he would open my drinks for me. And I had gone to work and I brought a couple snacks. I brought a soda, and I remember I opened the soda, and I remember thinking how foreign it felt to my hand. And I was like, why does that feel like I don't know how to open a soda can anymore? And it hit me that I hadn't opened my own can of soda in 2 weeks. And that just so happened to be the first time I had had a soda without him, to where I had to open one by myself. And it was just funny because it was just one less thing for me to worry about. Like if we're sitting down watching a show and he gets up to get a snack for himself, he'll ask me if I want anything. He'll ask me if I want a drink, and he'll bring it to me open. Or he'll set it down in front of me and then open it in front of me, Little things. It's all the little things. Not only that, but I'm like I said, crybaby. I'm a very emotional person, and he's never once shamed me for it. I always felt like I was so needy. Okay, I always felt like I was so needy. Like with my ex, I remember I would cry, and at first he would comfort me, and he would try to take my mind off of it, make me laugh, or tell me some stories to get my head out of it, right? And I thought it was so sweet. I thought I was so lucky to have him. And then I remember a few months in crying to him about something, and I could just see that the look on his face, he just seemed so blank. Like he just didn't care. He was not fazed at all. And I brought it up to him. I was like, do you not care? It would be nice if you could respond to what I'm saying, or why don't you care? It just seems like you don't care, and I didn't want to accuse him and be like, you don't care about me. But I was like, you're looking like you don't care about me. I'm crying. It would be nice to be held or something, or to be comforted. And he said to me well, you do this all the time. It's just, I don't know. I don't really feel bad because you cry all the time. And really, he was annoyed, but he didn't want to say that. He was trying to spare my feelings. Whereas with this man, if I'm crying, if I'm sad, if he can tell my tone's off, he's going to ask me what's wrong. He's going to, encourage me to talk about it, ask what he can do for me. And it doesn't matter what time of the night it is. He'll say, wake me, if he, it's he'll have work at 6 a.m. He doesn't anymore, but this was the point whenever he was working first shift. And he was like, no, he would have to wake up at 6 and go to work around 7. And he's like, I'm like, oh, I'll wake up. No, hold on. Say it's the next day, and he'll be like, oh, how'd you sleep? And I'm like, oh, not that well. I was crying. He'd say, well, why didn't you wake me up? I want you to wake me up when you're upset. I want to be there for you, and, you can talk to me. And I'm like, oh, well, you had work in the morning, so I didn't want you to go to work tired. He's like, that's fine. I don't mind going to work tired. I want to be there for you when you need me, And it doesn't matter. I've been with this man for over 1.5 years now, and it hasn't changed. He's always been that way. And I am pretty confident that it'll stay that way. Who knows? There's a 3-month rule. Some people say there's even a 2-year rule. But right now, I'm not going to worry about that because that's not something I can prevent if that does change. But right now, I'm happy that things have stayed the same way it was since before we even officially started dating, which is that he's always going to be there for me when I need him. There for me to the point where whenever my car got totaled, Super Bowl day, and he was driving, but it wasn't his fault. It was 100% on the other guy. He was drunk. But since we only had liability and the guy didn't have insurance and the car was claimed to be stolen, then we didn't get anything out of it, but this man, he took out a loan and he bought me a car because he knew that I would have had a really hard time being able to get a car on my own. He got me a car. And on top of that, when I quit my job, as you know, I recently just went back to my job, back to working when I hadn't worked for 8 months. 8 months unplanned. It was only supposed to be a couple months, and then I was going to go back to work because I was going to just take time off to really think about what I wanted to do with my life and really just focus on myself. But during that time, I was having a really hard time finding a job. He paid all of the bills. No complaints. No complaints. Of course, there were conversations where, we were just obviously the plan was never for him to do it forever, and I was just trying to find a job, but he never shamed me for it. He just encouraged me, he's like, well, I know that you're trying. I know that you're applying for jobs. I see you applying for jobs. He never accused me of lying or not trying hard enough. Nothing like that. And the reason why I even have those examples is because that's how it would have previously been with other people in my life, but no, he never did that to me. And this is one of the reasons, me meeting this man, this is one of the reasons why I believe that, things really do get better when you least expect it. I was I was actually in a decent point in my life when I met him too. I feel like I had finally started living for myself. Me breaking up with my ex was me choosing to not settle because I could see that the life I was going to live with him was going to be the same. The best way I can describe it is that he was a boy, you know? He just wasn't ready for everything, and so he couldn't be there for me in the ways that I needed. So I never really took it personally, but I was neglected in that relationship and I allowed myself to be. So I was finally choosing myself for the first time, and I was like, this man seems too good to be true, and this is like the happiest I've ever been. I don't even remember what my point was. Just things do get better, I never imagined that somebody like him existed, and the universe proved me wrong. And so even though a lot of stuff in life sucks, I'm still reminded that I have it pretty good because I have him, because I have somebody to love who loves me, and I do have a lot of support from my friends. And I know that's more than a lot of people can say, I know that I always have people to go to, even though sometimes I forget and it doesn't feel like it. I have a list of names on my whiteboard over there, names of people who I can contact when I'm feeling upset, because when I'm upset and I'm feeling that low, it's hard for me to remember that I have people who will be there for me. And I don't want, it's like you can't be afraid of reaching out to people, when you need help, because how else are they going to know? People aren't just going to catch that, like sense it telepathically. Maybe some people, I don't know, but not, they're not going to sense it and know to contact you. It's like, it's okay to reach out for help and ask for help when you're feeling down. And that's something even now, like some of my friends, like I'll be talking to them and they'll be like, oh, I just feel bad asking for help. And I'm like, don't feel bad asking for help. Like, we want to help you. We don't just say that to say it. We want to help you. We want to be there for you when you're feeling upset. But we can't reach out to you ourselves because we wouldn't know. Like, you are not a burden for needing to ask for help, for wanting help. It's like, and it makes me feel good to be able to help you. Like, please ask me for help. Call me in the middle of the night. I don't care. Like, I don't mind losing sleep. Like, that's the least of my concerns when it comes to your well-being. And so it's good to know, like, I have friends who also feel that same way. So what I wanted to talk about today was just be real about how I'm feeling mentally. I still do not like this job very much. I'm still grateful for it. I'm grateful that I found a job that makes $15 an hour. Where I live, that's decent enough pay. Like, of course, more would be preferred, but it's not too bad for what the job is. But what gets me is that I don't feel like this job brings out my fullest potential. I don't feel me. Whenever I'm working that job, it's kind of crazy how much I don't feel like myself. I'm usually pretty bubbly. I love talking to people. Like, I always say I'm the most extroverted introvert that you'll meet because I love spending a lot of time alone. But when I'm out, I do love talking to people. All the little things. Excuse me. You can learn so much in just like a 2-minute conversation with a stranger, But in my job where I just grocery shop for people, bag the groceries and stow them away, like, I don't feel like I'm living up to my fullest potential. It feels very meaningless to me. And not because it's a meaningless job, because it's a very important job, especially when it comes to people who just don't have the time in their day to do their own grocery shopping physically, like, and people with disabilities or, like mental health issues and stuff like that. People who, don't even have the energy to get up and brush their teeth and drive to the store and use all that energy to grocery shop. They can at least do that online and have, other people do that for them, and all they have to do is come pick it up. It's like, I'm not saying that it's a useless job. It is a meaningful job in that way. But what I mean is that I feel like I can provide meaning in a lot more ways. I have a lot more potential, and I'm not living my life in that way. And I do feel like me doing these little diaries is a way where I can help people, because when people do watch this stuff, and I don't know how long this video is, already 34 minutes long almost, I know that people find some type of comfort in it, maybe some form of advice, maybe just entertainment, but either way, it's a way to help people, and it's a way where all I'm doing is just being myself and expressing myself. And that's also an outlet for me, because if you can't tell, I can talk on and on and on because I have all these thoughts that just need to be let out. And so for all these thoughts that come naturally to me to be able to help other people, to be able to put that out on the internet, I think that's pretty cool. I'm like, I don't know, maybe I could go somewhere with this. It would be fun to have like a more professional, like nice looking, proper podcast, whatever. But I tell myself that I don't really care about the looks right now, because what matters is that I'm just being real. And it always feels good to me to just talk. And, I don't know if I pointed this out already, but I didn't brush my teeth today. I didn't do anything with my hair. I don't think I brushed my hair today. And one thing that stops me sometimes from recording is like, oh, I want to put on a little bit of makeup. I want to get the setup to look decent in the background. But that doesn't matter, because the way that I look does not change the weight of my words. Like, what I want is for people to hear what I have to say, not to and I can do that without looking, what am I trying to say? I don't know how to explain it, but you know what I mean? Without looking pretty. So I don't need to, and I'm not saying I'm ugly without makeup or anything, but you know what I mean? It's like so much, I'm just tired of faking everything. Like, sometimes, what bothers me about people focusing on my physical appearance so much, like, dude, I'll post something on TikTok about me ranting about something in my life, and somebody will comment about my looks, and I'm like, okay, like, sure, like, I guess that's appreciated, but, like, that's not the point of the video. And also, some people are weird about it. Like, why are you telling me about my facial structure in depth when this is a video of me talking about a traumatic experience? I don't know, and it depends on the context too, and if it's a man or a woman, and if it's meant to be creepy or not, because you can tell. But I'm so tired of it. I'm so tired of physical appearance mattering, like, especially when it comes to like comparing to other people. Like, people will be like say if I'm insecure about something and I might say something, they'll be like, well, at least you don't look like this person. And I'm like, okay, why are we talking this person down to try to talk me up? That pisses me off. And one quote that sticks with me has always stuck with me, is that comparison is the thief of joy. Because why are we constantly comparing ourselves to other people? I'll see comments on TikToks and people will be like, oh, I just looked at it'll be of a pretty girl and she'll have like a crop top on or something and like a toned stomach, and people will be like, just looked at myself inside. Or they'll be like, I just put down the bowl of Chipotle I was eating. And I'm like, no, like, why are we comparing? Oh my gosh. And then what really gets me too is when people will see somebody with like a desirable body type in their perspective, and they'll say, oh, what's your workout routine? And it's like, yeah, sometimes it's like, yeah, workout routine is nice. Like, maybe you can achieve those same results with their workout routine, but a lot of us just have very different body types, and no matter how hard you follow that workout routine, no matter how hard you go at the gym, you will never look like that. And that's not because it's a matter of you not trying hard enough. No, it's a matter of the fact that it is unattainable to achieve a body type with different bone structure than you have, with completely different genetics than you have. You are not going to look like them. And it's so disheartening, because I know what that did to me when I was 13 through like 16. The reason why I hopped off of social media when I was 17 is because of the number it was doing on my mental health, because I was constantly comparing myself to girls on the internet, whether that was the lives that they lived or the way that they looked, especially growing up being an Asian girl, growing up mostly around white people, where I already felt like I was weird and different and not good enough, because I didn't look like these girls, because I didn't fit in and I was just so different from everybody, whatever. On top of that, having ADHD and being extra different from everybody around me, whatever. Like, I wish that people could see how fake it all is. Like, and people are posting that they're going on these vacations and everything, but you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Are they even having a good time? Like, it's like one thing that, like, I remember I would see the way that this girl posted online, but I also knew stuff about her personal life. And that's what hit me, is that she was always posting all smiley and happy. But at school, she was talking to me about how depressed she was and her relationship with her parents and how bad that was, and how her boyfriend was bad to her. And, like, she was just in so many she was being abused in so many different ways, but nobody knew because online she was so desirable and everybody thought that her life was perfect. Like, no, like her life sucks. She's posting like that because it makes her feel better, you know, it maybe gives her a little bit of like an escape, you know, like a life that she can pretend like she's living to escape the one that she's living in now because it's so difficult for her, you know. It's not real. God, it is not real. Everything is so photoshopped. I hate it. Like, even I saw somebody recently who I follow on social media and I saw them in real life, and I just noticed it because the Photoshop was so like, it wasn't obvious to me until I saw them in real life, and it just hit me like, you know, I know how many people I see in her comments talking about how she's like, what am I trying to say? You know, like they'll talk her up and be like, "Oh, I wish I looked like you." But she doesn't even look like her. And oh my gosh, there's just so much to it. And so, you know, as much as sometimes I'm afraid of what people have to say about my appearance, at the same time, I'm like, why do I give a fuck about what anybody says about my appearance? That is not where my value lies. So you can say what you want about my appearance, feel whatever way you feel about the way that I look, but that's not going to change anything about the way that I really am and the way that I feel about myself. And on top of that, I think that just makes you look like more of a sad person if you have something negative to say, because why are you talking about that? Why does how I look bother you? That's kind of weird. Like, you should just, I don't know, pay more attention to yourself, to your own life. And a lot of it's projection, you know? People will project their own insecurities for no reason. Like, I think about what I do before I do things most of the time. So it's crazy to me. It's like, I'm like, did you think about this and then comment this and think that that was okay? Anyways, yeah. The other thing that bothers me is how rough this whole episode has been. Like, what am I even talking about? I don't know. And part of me really does not want to post this because of how I look and because of how I sound and because of the fact that, like, my words have been all over the place. But at the same time, I always come back to, well, don't you want to be authentic and vulnerable? And isn't this being real and authentic and vulnerable and, like, unedited? Like, exactly what you want to be. So isn't this what you want to post, right? Because that's what you want to give the world. That's the type of world that you want to live in. So don't you want to project that too? Is project the right word? Don't you want to embody that, right? I don't know. So thanks for listening. I hope you got something out of it. I cried on camera. I did that. Did I do it? I feel like I did that in a previous episode already, just not that bad. I don't know. Being vulnerable like this makes me feel weird, but I had a dream last night about a baby turtle. Not last night. I napped today, and that's when I had the dream. About a baby turtle that turned into a baby rabbit. And I looked up the symbolization of a turtle and a rabbit, and I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I feel like this is telling me something. And so what I got from it is that I need to be more vulnerable, which makes a lot of sense because when I'm more vulnerable and talking about stuff like this, I do feel a lot better. Like, it just feels more me. I don't know how else to explain it, but I feel more connected to myself. I think especially because vulnerability is something I ran from for so long, but something that came so natural to me, you know, with me being so sensitive and crying all the time. But in that way, it's like I was very empathetic, and, you know, empathy, vulnerability, compassion, I feel like that all comes together. They all work together. And so I feel like whenever I am vulnerable and I talk about these things, one, it helps people, and two, it helps me. Because it is healing in a way, and I feel like the more you talk about things, like, I feel like there's not enough vulnerable people out there, and so it makes us afraid to connect with that vulnerable part of ourselves. But I feel like that's like one of the most important parts to connect with, because that's how you heal and that's how you move on. Because when you have a lot of stuff that you know, keep held inside that you don't heal from, it does hold you back in a lot of ways that you don't realize. And so I'm like, maybe this can help, and that's enough for me. So thank you for listening. I hope you're all doing well. Yeah. Bye.